Now I have everything I need. Names to avoid: Sarah, Marcus, Carol, Ruth, Natalie, Derek, Danny, Pam, Lily, Winifred, Kyle, Helen, Vivienne, Beth, Theo, Joanna, Garrett, Voss, Ingram, Fiona, Claudia, Preston, Marianne, Leah, Owen, Ray, June, Abigail, Torres, Danielle, Becca, Iris, Claire, Elliot, Nora, Calloway, Thomas, Gerald, Danielle, Becca, Iris, Claire, Elliot, Nora, Calloway, Thomas, Gerald, Adeline. New names I'll use: Megan, narrator, Cole, husband, contractor / builder, dad equals Frank, sister equals Brooke, managing partner equals Douglas Hale, colleague equals Patricia Weston, husband's team lead equals Zach. Scenario: dad is a senior VP at a commercial real estate development firm. He dismisses his son-in-law Cole, who owns a small custom construction company. Not knowing Cole holds the only licensed rights to a proprietary structural reinforcement method their flagship project legally requires. My father called on a Sunday evening, and I knew from the first word it was going to be one of those conversations. He opened cheerfully. He always did when he wanted something. Megan, I wanted to give you the details for the celebration dinner. Friday, April 11th, the Riverside Club, Drivet Terrace, 7 p.m. I told him that sounded wonderful. It does, he said. Douglas Hale will be there. The full development board. This is 22 years in the making, sweetheart. I want you there to see it. I said of course Cole and I would be there. He paused, just long enough that I felt it before he said it. Actually, I've been thinking about that. The evening is going to be very high level. Board members, institutional investors, project architects. I don't want Cole to feel out of place. I set down the dish towel I'd been holding. What does that mean? It means these are people who spent their careers in commercial development at a certain scale. It's a specific world. Cole is wonderful at what he does, but this isn't really his environment. Cole was in the living room. I could see the back of his head from where I stood in the kitchen. I had about 30 seconds to decide how this ended. Let me make sure I understand you, I said. You're asking me to come to your promotion dinner without my husband. I'm thinking of him, my father said. He'd be sitting there while people discuss floor-to-ceiling project financing and structural engineering at the corporate level. He'd have nothing to contribute. It would be uncomfortable. You've never asked what he would contribute. Megan, I know what contractors do. He's not just a contractor. He builds things. He's skilled at it. But this is a different world. I heard Cole shift on the couch. He wasn't listening. He had his headphones in. But my heart was already beating too fast. I'm not coming without him, I said. Think about what you're saying. I have. For 3 years I've watched you treat my husband like he's a footnote. I'm done pretending, that's fine. I have never been anything but polite to Cole. Polite isn't respect. You never once asked about his work. Not once. My father's voice hardened. Because installing drywall and laying foundation isn't the same as managing a $400 million development portfolio. Those aren't equivalent positions. Then neither do I said. If he's not welcome, neither am I. He hung up first. I stood there in my kitchen, not moving, listening to the silence. Cole pulled out one headphone. Everything okay? I told him everything. My name is Megan Calloway. I'm 31 years old. I've been married to Cole Hargrove for 6 years. He's 34. He owns a company called Hargrove Construction Solutions, 12 employees, licensed general contractor, operating out of Portland, Oregon, specializing in commercial and industrial builds. That's what I would have told you a year ago. What I'd add now is this: Cole also holds a proprietary licensing certification for a structural reinforcement method called the Hargrove-Veliz process, a load-bearing retrofit technique he co-developed with his former professor at Oregon State, Dr. Tis Stockton. Emilio Veliz, over 4 years of research and field testing. The certification is required by Oregon and Washington building codes for any mid-rise commercial build involving certain soil compositions in the Pacific Northwest. It's the only such private certification currently accepted under the relevant state guidelines. My father didn't know that. My father didn't know that. My father never asked. It started 3 years after our wedding, when my mother, Karen Calloway, was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer, and my father responded by becoming someone I didn't fully recognize. Before that, He'd been distracted by work. Frank Calloway, Senior VP of Acquisitions at Meridian Development Group, had always been more comfortable in a boardroom than a kitchen. But he'd made an effort. He'd asked Cole about his projects. He'd complimented the deck Cole built at their house one summer. He'd shaken Cole's hand at holidays like he meant it. After the diagnosis, something shifted. My mother spent 14 months in treatment and came out the other side, clear scans, cautious optimism. But my father emerged from those 14 months harder. Like the fear had calcified into something rigid. The edges of him got sharper. The warmth became selective. He redirected everything, attention, conversation, approval, toward what he understood. Deals, square footage, funding rounds, things he could measure and control. Cole didn't fit into those categories. So my father stopped seeing him. The first time I noticed it clearly was Thanksgiving 2.5 years ago. Cole mentioned a project he was finishing, a medical office building in Beaverton, seismically upgraded, LEED certified, under budget. A real achievement by any measure. My father looked at him, nodded once, and said, "That's great." Then turned to me. "Megan, how's the non-profit work?" Like Cole hadn't said a word, I answered my father's question because I didn't know what else to do. Cole looked at his plate. My younger sister Brooke across the table caught my eye. She raised her eyebrows, just slightly. I shook my head. Not now. It became a pattern. Christmas. My father gave Cole a $40 gift card to Home Depot. "For your projects," he said, smiling. Cole thanked him, tucked it in his wallet, and didn't mention it again. I found it on the kitchen counter 2 weeks later and held it for a long moment before putting it in a drawer. My husband ran a 12-person construction company. He earned a good living. He had a degree in civil engineering from Oregon State and had spent 4 years doing postgraduate research before deciding he'd rather build things himself than consult on other people's bills. He'd made that choice deliberately and without apology. My father had never asked about any of it. At a birthday dinner 18 months ago, my father's 60th, restaurant downtown, family and colleagues, one of his board members, a man named Warren Schultz, asked Cole where he'd gone to school. Cole said Oregon State, civil engineering. Warren looked genuinely impressed. "What year?" "Graduated 2014. Stayed on for 4 more years doing research and field certifications." My father, who had been half listening, turned with a slightly puzzled look. "I thought you went into construction right out of school." "I did research first," Cole said. "Materials science, load-bearing systems. I developed a structural certification with my professor." My father blinked. "Oh, well, that's good." He picked up his wine. "Warren, what did you think of the Portland Harbor rezoning proposal?" Subject changed. 30 seconds flat. He never brought it up again. I waited. I kept waiting the way you wait for someone to connect a wire they keep leaving loose. He didn't. I finally understood that my father didn't miss it. He dismissed it. Forgetting is passive. Dismissal is a choice. 11 months ago, Cole came home from a job site and told me something over dinner that I didn't fully process at the time. He'd been contacted by a legal intermediary, a firm called Bassett and Crane, representing a development company seeking to license the Hargrove-Veller certification for a large-scale commercial project. The project involved a multi-use mid-rise in Portland's South Park Blocks district, construction beginning late spring. The soil composition under the site triggered the state requirement for Hargrove-Veller's certification on all structural reinforcement work. Cole had been in talks with them since the fall, 6 months of back and forth. They wanted a blanket license that let them use any subcontractors they chose. Cole kept declining. He required certified installers and on-site compliance verification. They kept sending new proposals. He kept saying no. I asked which company was developing the project. He said Meridian Development Group. I set my fork down. "That's Dad's company." He nodded. "I know. I put it together around month 2. Saw the project name in one of their proposal documents. The South Park Blocks Tower. I'd heard your dad mention it. My heart was beating strangely." "Does he know it's you?" "No. They're negotiating through Bassett and Crane. All they have on file is my company name and license credentials. No one's connected it to you or to Frank." I stared at him. "Should I tell him?" Cole leaned back in his chair. What would happen if you did? I thought about it. He'd either pressure you to give favorable terms because we're family, or he'd think you were trying to leverage the connection. Exactly. And the negotiation has been keen so far. Business is business. I don't see why family should complicate it. I asked what they were offering. Blanket license, no oversight, minimum installer requirements. They want to use the cheapest certified subs they can find and move fast. I've said no 6 times. Why does it matter so much? Cole was quiet for a moment. Because I've seen what happens when load-bearing retrofits get rushed by undertrained crews. Cracking, settling, in worst cases structure of failure years out. People are going to live and work in that building. I'm not signing off on the method I developed being used incorrectly just because someone's trying to save money on a $90 million project. I thought about that for a long time after dinner. My father's company was trying to get Cole's signature. Cole kept refusing to give it without conditions. Neither of them knew the other was involved. I could have called my father that night. Sent him an email, a text, something simple. Dad, you should know Cole holds the Hargrove Velez license your firm needs for South Park blocks. I didn't. Not out of strategy, out of something that felt more like exhaustion than anything else. My father had spent 3 years not asking about Cole's work. He'd never asked about his degree, his research, the certification. He'd handed him a $40 gift card to Home Depot and called it thoughtful. I was supposed to hand him the information he'd never valued enough to seek. And Cole was right. If I said something, my father would assume an angle. He'd think Cole had engineered the situation. He'd make it about leverage. Better to let it play out. My father called on a Sunday evening. He was in an excellent mood. His promotion to Executive VP of Development had just been formalized. South Park blocks were scheduled to break ground in 6 weeks, and everything he'd worked toward for 22 years was converging into a single April dinner at the Riverside Club. And then he told me to come alone. After I hung up, Cole pulled out both headphones. He saw my face. I sat down next to him on the couch and told him everything. The exact words. The "we don't want him to feel out of place" framing. The contractors and executives are different worlds speech. Cole listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Okay." I said, "It's not okay. I know. But I don't need to be at his dinner, Megan. I never expected to be. That's not the point. What is the point? The point is he spent 3 years treating you like you're less than him, and I'm done pretending that's fine." Cole looked at me for a long moment. "You know he won't apologize." I said, "I know. But I'm done waiting for him to change. I'm changing what I'm willing to accept." Brooke called 2 hours later. "Dad called me," she said. "He wants me to talk you out of it. I'm not changing my mind." "I know." A pause. "Anna, is this the hill? He told my husband he doesn't belong at a table with executives." Silence on the line. "I know," she said. "That was wrong. But Dad doesn't. He doesn't hear himself. He doesn't see it the way it looks from the outside. He doesn't see Cole at all. That's the problem." Brooke was quiet. "Then what do you want me to do? Go to the dinner. Be there for him. This isn't your fight. I'm not asking you to choose. You're not asking me to. But I might anyway." We stayed on the phone a few more minutes. Before she hung up, she said, "If something happens at that dinner, something Dad doesn't expect, I'll let you know." I didn't know what she meant. I filed it away. Friday, April 11th. Cole and I went to dinner at Tasca, a small Spanish restaurant in the Pearl District we'd been going to since our second year together. The owner, a man named Marco, knew our usual order. Nobody there cared that Cole had calluses on his hands and drove a work truck. We got there at 6:30, the same time my father's dinner was starting at the Riverside Club, 4 miles away. Cole ordered the lamb, I ordered the fish. We talked about his week. The medical office build was ahead of schedule. His site lead, Zach, was coming into his own. Things were good. Normal conversation. The kind of conversation my father had never once had with Cole in 6 years. At 7:22 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Brooke, just sat down. 22 people. Dad looks happy. Lot of suits." I showed Cole. He read it and looked back at his food. I put the phone face down. Marco brought us churros at 8:45 on the house. The total bill was $61. 4 miles away, my father was spending somewhere north of $10,000 on a dinner I wasn't attending. At 9,007, my phone lit up. Brooke, something just happened. Sending you something. The video came through 30 seconds later. 43 seconds. Shot from across the room, her hand shaking slightly. I hit play. Private terrace of the Riverside Club. Round tables dressed in white linen, candles, city lights below. My father was at the head table, mid-laugh about something, relaxed and happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. Then Douglas Hale stood up. He was the one who'd hired my father, who'd built Meridian into what it was. Mid-60s, silver-haired, the kind of man who didn't raise his voice because he'd never needed to. He said, "Frank, before we continue, I need to ask you something." My father smiled, gestured as if to say, "Go ahead." "Your daughter Megan, she's married to Cole Hargrove, correct? Of Hargrove Construction Solutions." My father nodded, still smiling. "Going on 6 years. Why? What does Cole do exactly?" My father's smile held, but something shifted underneath it. "He runs a construction company. Residential and commercial company. Residential and commercial. Good at it. Does he have an engineering background?" I believe he studied something like that. Civil engineering, maybe. Oregon State. Postgraduate work. A pause. "I'm not sure. He might have done, I think he mentioned research at some point. I don't know the details." Douglas's expression didn't change. He reached into his jacket and put a document on the table. "Frank, does your son-in-law hold the Hargrove Welles structural certification?" The smile dropped. I could see it happen even in the shaky phone footage. The color that left my father's face, the way his hand stilled on the tablecloth. What? The load-bearing retrofit certification, the one required by state code for the South Park block site, the one we've been trying to license for 8 months through Bassett and Crane. Douglas's voice was even, patient in a way that was somehow worse than anger. "We've been in negotiations with the Cole Hargrove, civil engineer, Oregon State, co-developer of the Hargrove-Welles process." "Is that your son-in-law?" "I don't. He's never said anything about he's turned down 6 licensing proposals, Frank. He requires certified installers and compliance oversight on every job. We've been trying since last July to find terms he'll accept." A pause. "Did you know your son-in-law holds the only certification that lets us break ground on our flagship project?" The table had gone very quiet. Someone, I couldn't see who, said, "Wait, Hargrove, as in the Hargrove we can't close?" My father looked like he was trying to locate the floor. He's never mentioned a certification. He's never mentioned any of this." Douglas was still. "Frank, where is your son-in-law tonight?" My father opened his mouth, closed it. "He wasn't. I didn't invite." He stopped. Tried again. "This is a professional event. I thought it was better if you didn't invite the man who owns the rights we need to break ground in 6 weeks. It wasn't a question." The video ended. Brooke's storage had filled up mid-recording. I sat on the couch, phone in both hands, Cole reading over my shoulder. "When did Douglas figure it out?" he asked. "Tonight. Just now." My phone rang. "Brooke." I put her on speaker. "Did you watch it?" Her voice was tight. "Megan, did you know? Did you know Dad's entire project depended on Cole's certification?" Cole said, "Hey, Brooke. Yeah, we knew." "Since when?" I said. "Cole told me in November. I didn't know Douglas would make the connection tonight. I didn't know it would come out like this." "Why didn't you tell Dad?" Cole said. "Because he never asked." A long silence. "Brooke," I said, "what happened after the video cut off?" Douglas pulled Dad into the hallway. Maybe 15 minutes. I couldn't hear most of it. When they came back, Dad's hands were shaking. He said he wasn't feeling well. He left before dessert. She lowered her voice. "The board members are still there." Warren Schutz said, "Megan," he said it loud enough that I could hear. He said, "Did Frank really not know his own son-in-law owns the certification we need?" And someone else said he never asked. My father sent 7 texts the next day. None of them contained the word sorry. The first, "We need to talk." Then, "This is important. Please call." Then, your husband has been withholding relevant professional information. Then, this affects my position at the company. I need an explanation. The last one, at 4047 in the afternoon. You're not being fair to me. I showed them to Cole. Notice he doesn't apologize, he said. Notice he still doesn't ask about your work. Just this affects my position. I put my phone down. 3 days after the dinner, an email arrived at Cole's business address from Douglas Hale directly. Mr. Hargrove, I'd like to speak with you personally about the South Park Blocks licensing arrangement. I understand from Bassett and Crane that our previous proposals haven't met your requirements for installer oversight. I'd welcome the opportunity to discuss a revised approach that takes your standards seriously. I believe we got off on the wrong foot. Available Thursday at 1 p.m. Douglas Hale, Meridian Development Group. Cole showed me before replying. I asked, are you still willing to work with them? I'm willing to work with anyone who'll do it right. Douglas isn't your father. He's a businessman who needs a solution. If he'll meet my terms, I'll license the certification. He replied, Mr. Hale, thank you for reaching out directly. I'm open to a conversation provided any agreement includes enforceable installation standards and mandatory use of Hargrove Valley's certified crews. I'm available Thursday at 1 p.m. Cole Hargrove. That was who Cole was. Not vindictive. Not punishing. Just firm. My father sent an email 4 days after the dinner from his personal account. Megan, I think there has been a serious misunderstanding. Cole's involvement with the South Park Blocks project is something he should have disclosed. It creates a professional conflict that reflects poorly on both of us. I am asking you to help me resolve this situation. I understand you're upset about the dinner. We can address that later. Right now, I need your help with something that affects my career and my standing at Meridian. Dad. I read it 3 times. No apology for excluding Cole from the dinner. No acknowledgement of 3 years of dismissal. No recognition that he had created this situation by never once asking, never once being curious. Just, help me fix my problem. I replied that same night. Dad. Cole's licensing decisions are his professional business. I won't interfere with them. If you want to talk about our relationship, I'm willing to have that conversation. But we're not talking about Cole's work. Megan. He called immediately. I didn't answer. The Thursday call between Cole and Douglas lasted 80 minutes. When it was over, Cole came downstairs to where I was working. It's done, he said. Douglas just sent the final term sheet. He agreed to everything. I set down my laptop. Everything, mandatory certified crews, compliance verification at framing and final inspection, my right to revoke the license if installation protocols aren't followed, license fee upfront, royalty per project fees. He agreed to all of it. He said we should have listened to you in July, would have saved everyone 8 months. Cole paused. I told him it would have saved more than that. Did he mention my dad? No. I didn't ask. Business is business. Your father is something else. 2 weeks after the dinner, I agreed to meet my father for coffee. He texted 6 times, called twice, and sent a second email that was slightly less transactional than the first. Brooke had gently suggested that whatever I decided, I deserved to say it to his face. She was right. I met him at a coffee shop in the Alphabet District, neutral ground, 15 minutes from both of us. He was already there when I arrived. He looked tired. I didn't feel sorry for him. I sat down without hugging him. I'm glad you came, he said. I think there's been a misunderstanding about... There hasn't been a misunderstanding, I said. There's been 3 years of you treating Cole like he doesn't matter. That's not a misunderstanding, that's a pattern. His face tightened. I've always been polite to Cole. Polite isn't the same as respectful. You've never asked about his degree, never asked about his research, never asked about his work. You gave him a $40 gift card to Home Depot one Christmas because you assumed that was his level. I was being thoughtful. You were being condescending. And you didn't even notice the difference. I put a piece of paper on the table. 3 pages, actually. A timeline I'd made the night before. Dates, incidents. Direct quotes where I could remember them. Thanksgiving, that's great, and the subject change. Christmas and the gift card. The birthday dinner, where he interrupted Cole talking about his research and redirected to Warren within 30 seconds. This is what 3 years looks like written down, I said. He scanned the pages. These are your interpretations. These are your actions. If I was less attentive than I could have been. Don't. My voice was steady. I'd practiced this. Don't make it passive. You weren't less attentive. You made a decision about who Cole was based on his job title, and you never revisited it. You never asked. And now you're sitting here because that decision embarrassed you in front of your board. You're not here because you hurt my husband. You're here because you got caught. My father's jaw tightened. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry. I looked at him. That's not an apology. That's you trying to end this conversation. What do you want me to say, Megan? I want you to mean it. But you don't. You're not sorry you dismissed Cole for 3 years. You're sorry it cost you something? That's not fair. You told me my husband didn't belong at a table with executives. In those words, that was 3 weeks ago. I stood up. I'm setting a boundary. If you can't respect Cole, you don't get access to my life. When you're ready to actually apologize, not because you need something, but because you understand what you did, you can call me. Until then, we're done. I left $4 on the table for my untouched coffee and walked out. The whole thing had taken 20 minutes. I sat in my car for a while, hands on the steering wheel, not moving. Then I drove home. Cole was in the garage. He saw my face and set down what he was working on. How'd it go? I'm done waiting for him to see me, I said. He didn't say anything. He just put his arms around me and I let him, and we stood there in the garage for a few minutes without talking. Sometimes that's enough. Brooke called me 3 days later. Her voice was shaking in the way it gets when she's done something that scared her. I went to Dad's house, she said. I told him off. Actually told him off. I said you didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I've been watching him dismiss Cole for 3 years. I told myself it wasn't my place. But after seeing your timeline, staying quiet makes me part of it. What did he say? He tried to make it about me taking sides. I told him I was taking the side of basic decency. I asked if she was okay. She said yes and scared, both. She was scared of losing him the way I had. You're not using me, I said. I'm right here. I know, it's just Mom is already far away. Remission isn't the same as gone, but it changed everything. If I lose Dad too, you're not losing him. You're just changing what you'll accept from him. She was quiet. Before we hung up, she said she'd made a therapy appointment. First session in 2 weeks. I told her I was proud of her. A week after my conversation with Douglas, a woman named Patricia Weston emailed me. She was a senior project director at Meridian. I didn't know her. She'd gotten my contact from Brooke. Megan, I was at the April 11th dinner. I wanted to reach out for 2 reasons. First, what happened that evening told several of us something we probably should have seen sooner. Your father has never spoken about Cole's work with any detail or curiosity. That's a failure on his part, and it reflected in a room full of people who knew better. Second, I want you to know that a number of us have significant respect for the position Cole held throughout the negotiation. He was right to insist on certified installation. Our industry cuts corners in ways that eventually catch up to us. It's uncommon to meet someone who won't be moved on that, especially when the money is real and the pressure is on. If you're ever open to coffee, no agenda, no strings, I'd enjoy the conversation. Patricia Weston. I forwarded it to Cole. He read it, thought about it and said, she might be doing politics. Or she might mean it. I said, maybe both. He said, could be both. I didn't reply right away. But I saved the email. A month after the dinner that changed everything, Brooke and I were at our house for Sunday dinner. Just us and Cole and Zach, his job site lead, who Brooke had met once before and quietly liked. We made roast chicken and roasted vegetables and bought bread from the bakery 2 blocks down. Nobody brought anything fancy. Brooke brought wine. Zach brought brownies from the grocery store deli counter and looked slightly embarrassed about it. We ate and talked about nothing that mattered and everything that did. Zach told a story about a job site where the structural drawings hadn't accounted for an existing gas line. Everyone laughed. Brooke talked about a trail she wanted to hike before summer. Cole described a detail on the current build he was proud of, a load transfer solution he'd worked out with his crew. And everyone at the table listened. The whole table. After dinner, Brooke helped me clear the dishes. Zach and Cole were laughing about something in the living room. She looked around our kitchen, the good mess of a meal just finished, and said quietly, "This is what it's supposed to feel like." I said, "It's just dinner." "No," she said, "it's what you chose." My eyes stung a little. "Is it okay to feel this good?" I asked. When things are still, relief and grief can live in the same place," she said. "Neither one cancels out the other." She wasn't wrong. After the guests left, Cole and I did the dishes together. He washed, I dried, comfortable quiet. He said, "That was a good night." I said, "It was. You seem lighter." "I think I am." He handed me a pan. "Are you still waiting for him to call?" "Part of me is, but it's a smaller part than it was." "That's something it is." I looked around our kitchen. The good mess. The dish towels and the leftover wine and the brownies still on the counter. "I started therapy last week," I said. Cole looked at me. "The therapist said I'm not just grieving what happened with Dad. She said I'm grieving the father he never was. The one I kept waiting for him to become. That makes sense. She said I'm allowed to protect myself from someone who hurts me, even when that person is a parent." I paused. I needed to hear it from someone who wasn't you. Not because I don't trust you, because you love me so you can't always see it clearly. She has no reason to reassure me. Cole nodded slowly. "Yeah." I set down the dish towel. "I don't know if he'll ever apologize. I don't know if he'll ever get back to something real. But I know I stopped waiting for him to decide I was worth seeing. That's," I searched for the word, "that's something I did for myself. Not against him. For me." Cole turned off the faucet, dried his hands, pulled me in. "That's the beginning," he said quietly. "Of what? Healing." "My father hasn't apologized. It's been 2 months. He emailed once more. Shorter this time, slightly less entitled. He said he was thinking about what I'd said. That he might have been unfair. He used the phrase, 'if I made you feel dismissed,' which is not the same as 'I dismissed you,' but it was closer than anything he'd managed before. I haven't responded. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. I'm not waiting for him anymore." That's the difference. Cole signed the licensing agreement for South Park blocks. The certification fee was substantial. The work will be done correctly. Crews would be trained. The building will stand. That's what Cole cared about. Not the money, not the vindication, not my father's face in that video going grey, just the work. Done right? By people who know what they're doing. The building is going up now. Cole drove past the site last week and pointed it out to me from the car. I looked at it, the steel frame, the cranes, the scaffolding, and thought about how many people were going to work and eat and meet inside those walls and never know a thing about what it took to make them safe. That's most of what matters. The invisible work that holds things up. I finally understand why Cole never needed my father to see him. He already knew who he was. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since all of this happened. Not in some grand philosophical way. Just the ordinary kind. The kind you notice when you look back at a sequence of events and see how cleanly one thing led to the next. My father spent 3 years making a decision. He decided Cole wasn't worth his curiosity. He decided a man who works with his hands couldn't have anything valuable to say at a dinner table full of people who work with spreadsheets. He made that decision quietly, consistently, and without ever examining it. And every time he changed the subject, every time he gave a one-word response and turned away, every time he handed my husband a $40 gift card and called it thoughtful, he was reinforcing that decision, stacking it, building something he couldn't see. What he built, without knowing it, was the exact situation that humiliated him in front of 22 people whose opinion mattered most to him. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's just what happens when you stop being curious about the people around you. The world doesn't stop moving because you stopped paying attention. Cole kept working. Cole kept researching. Cole kept saying no to bad terms and yes to good work. None of that required my father's awareness to be real, and eventually, reality walked into the room and introduced itself. I think about Cole a lot when I think about what integrity actually looks like in practice. Not as a concept, as a daily choice. He had every reason to compromise. 6 rejected proposals, 8 months of back and forth. A licensing fee that would have come through faster if he just dropped his standards. And underneath all of it, the quiet knowledge that his refusal was making things harder for my father's career, even if my father didn't know why. Cole knew. And he still said no, not because he wanted my father to suffer. Because there are people who are going to work inside that building, and they deserve wars that were built correctly. That's what I mean when I talk about intelligence that actually matters. Not credentials, not titles. The kind of mind that sees a problem in an HVAC system nobody else noticed, spends 4 years solving it, and then refuses to let the solution be used badly just because the money is good. That's rare. My father had a front row seat to it for 6 years and never once looked up from his own reflection long enough to see it. What I learned, what I'm still learning, is that the hardest boundaries to hold aren't the ones with strangers. They're the ones with people who raised you, people you love and wanted to be loved by. Walking out of that coffee shop was the hardest thing I'd done in years. Not because I doubted myself, because I'd spent so long hoping he'd come around that the act of finally stopping felt like grieving something. The father I'd needed him to be. The version of him that would have looked at Cole and been curious instead of dismissive. But here's what I know now. You can't build a good life while you're waiting for someone else to finally see its value. Cole never waited for my father's approval. He just kept doing good work. I think that's the thing I want to carry forward. Not the vindication, not the video, not the look on my father's face when Douglas said the name. Just that. The willingness to keep doing the work correctly, even when nobody important is watching. Especially then,